evening and welcome to Campus Voices. This is a program where we take a look at what's going on in the Lexington and UK communities. I'm your host, Muhammad Ahmad, and this year marks the 70th year of integration here at UK. And tonight we're discussing the past, present, and future of diversity here on UK's campus. We first begin in the past, where the UK administration focused on making integration a gradual process that sought to diminish racist incidents. WRFL reporter Brandon Gent has more on the man who broke the color barrier on campus and pioneered integration here at UK.
In 1949, Lyman T. Johnson became the first African American to be enrolled at the University of Kentucky, but it was not an easy process. When Johnson first applied for enrollment in UK's graduate program, he was denied on the basis of day law, which prohibited the teaching of black and white students in the same school at all levels of education. Johnson filed a court suit for admission to the university, and a federal judge ruled in Johnson's favor. Thanks to Johnson, nearly 30 African American students entered UK's graduate and professional programs in 1949, but it took until the Supreme Court decision of Brown versus the Board of Education in 1954 for UK to allow African American students to be enrolled into the undergraduate program. In the book Keeping the University Growing and Free by former University of Kentucky President Herman Lee Donovan, Donovan writes about the university's plan for integration, writing, "We must move slowly, and the less publicity the better." Donovan also mentions that during the first year of integration, African American students were asked to find their own living arrangements and work out their own social lives. Brandon Gent, WRFL News.
And tonight we have three guests joining us in the studio. First, we have the director of the Bias Incident Response Team and faculty advisor for the Black Student Union, UK chapter of the NAACP, and advisor for Shades of Pride, Poetic Justice Organization, Carol Taylor Shim. And joining her, we have Associate Director for the Martin Luther King Center, Jamal McDaniel. Jamal collaborates with the Director and King Center team in creating diverse programs and campus-wide initiatives for the UK community. And finally, we have the Vice President of the Office of Institutional Diversity, Dr. Sonja Feast-Price. Dr. Price advises UK President Eli Capilouto and the Provost on all academic, fiscal, programmatic, and administrative policy decisions regarding the university's diversity and inclusivity goals. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. And Ms. Taylor, I want to start with you. So we heard about the university's plan to integrate. So with that said, why did they make a policy that slowly integrated campus?
My guess is that at the time, integrating any all-white space was probably a pretty radical sort of move. And so I definitely could understand why at that particular time they were like, let's do this slowly. Let's not bring a lot of attention to it. I think universities have a lot of different pressures. And I'm sure at that time there were a lot of outside influences on how UK decided to integrate an institution. And so my guess would be is that there were a lot of those kinds of things that were playing into why they felt the need to be slower and more deliberate about it. And there were also probably some safety risk for people. There are probably a host of reasons why they decided to do it the way that they did. It won't make a lot of sense to us now, but I'm sure at the time that's probably what a lot of institutions were doing.
And Jamal, I want to turn to you. What effects can limiting interactions between students of different races have? What can that lead to?
I think that it can lead to more, I think it can continue to impact how we just show up every day in society. A lot of folks now are no longer comfortable or not comfortable at all interacting with people that are different from themselves, which means they're not learning the way that they should be. They're not learning how to disagree or how to get along with people. And I think that we know through research that the more interactions you have with people who are different from you, the better that you are as a person. I think that it also leads to being more empathetic. And I think that that's something we really need to push for in today's society.
And then, Dr. Price, I want to ask you, so when you're making advising decisions for President Capilouto and the Provost, do you look at how the university has approached diversity in the past? And, what part does that play in how you advise UK on diversity today?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be here and share in this very important conversation. So when it comes to sharing suggestions and having input in some of the things that we should do, definitely it's taking into consideration the past. History teaches us some very, very important lessons, and many of the things we try to avoid are those things that are from our past. And so you think about the past, you think about where you are, considering the context, and then thinking about ways in which to move forward. I always loved the phrase by Dr. Doris Wilkinson. She would always talk about moving forward with a certain level of deliberate speed. And so while back in the day, it was making things slow and easy in terms of moving forward, but I always refer back to Dr. Doris Wilkinson, who talks about making change with all deliberate speed.
We heard Jamal talk about how some people might be uncomfortable and unempathetic with these ideas. How do you get people to sort of break out of that bubble that they might be in and get them to step out of that comfort zone and push for the change that the university is looking for?
Yeah. I think Jamal hit upon a very important word when he said empathy. Empathy allows us to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. And I know I hear this so much, but we have people from all over the world, 150 countries throughout this United States of America. Every county is represented on this campus. And I think it's so important to be able to understand the lived experiences from somebody else, because if not here at this university, then where? Where will you have the opportunity to engage with people from all over the world, throughout the country, throughout this state of Kentucky? And so I have found in my own life, when I am able to engage with people that have had different lived experiences, it broadens my perspectives. And it causes me to reflect on why I believe what I believe, whether or not what I believe is, whether it's solid or whether there is room for change or expanding my perception. That's what happens when we talk with people that have had different experiences. It broadens our perspective and it gives us empathy.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's actually what we're going to talk about next, because today, obviously, UK has a completely different look when it comes to diversity and inclusion, but there is still progress that can be made and challenges that the university faces. Brandon Gent has a story on some of UK's difficulties of promoting diversity.
According to the University of Kentucky Office for Institutional Diversity, racial minorities are just over 25% of UK's student body, but diversity and inclusion still faces challenges. Assistant Dean and Director of the Diversity for the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environment, Mia Farrell, believes that the lack of interaction with diversity is one of these challenges.
We have students that come from different backgrounds, faculty and staff as well, and so it can be a challenge when you may not identify with a diverse identity.
Another challenge is financial investment for programs that promote diversity.
A second one is always funding, because we have to make sure that we are getting the proper training.
According to the 2019-2020 University of Kentucky operating budget, the Office for Institutional Diversity received just over $2.8 million in funding. But UK student and president of the Black Student Union, Taylor Trobway, would like to see more than just monetary investment.
I would like to see the campus invest more in minority organizations, financially, promotion-wise, even interacting with minority organizations.
Even with these challenges, student organizations and campus resources have been one way to promote diversity and inclusion. Brandon Gent, WRFL News.
All right, Ms. Taylor, I want to ask you, so just based on what we heard, what can be done to ensure that students from backgrounds that may not have been exposed to diversity will become, educated on the subject and become more accepting here at UK?
Yeah, I think the institution can be more intentional in the way that we talk about diversity and inclusion and equity and justice. We do a disservice to students when we aren't intentional in having those kinds of discussions with them. And so we do have students who have come from communities where everybody looks like them, everybody talks like them, everybody goes to the same church. Like, we have to provide those opportunities for students across a host of marginalized identities and a host of non-marginalized identities to be in community together, but to be learning about what people's truths are. Like, there's a whole history of this country that we don't talk about. And I often think what it would be like if that was like a mandatory course for every student who came to UK. Like, you have to take some sort of class on navigating a diverse world or being an inclusive person, whatever the language needs to be. Businesses do better when they embrace diversity and inclusion. Employers are looking for employees that can do that as well. And so we have an obligation as an institution of higher education to provide as many opportunities in the classroom and outside of the classroom for people to learn and understand what their own experiences have been, but also what other people's experiences have been, and how those experiences shape this entire community.
You said experiences outside of the classroom. What are some examples of breaking the ice when it comes to that outside of the classroom?
Yeah, like there's a ton of different organizations that are centered on lots of different identities. People don't lose anything when they go learn about somebody else. They don't lose a thing. But we have to encourage people to take that risk, to sit in what little bit of discomfort they may have. Like, discomfort is not a cause of death. No one ever dies from discomfort. People can be uncomfortable and be completely fine afterwards. But we have to encourage students and staff and faculty too, to be more welcoming to each other, to be more empathetic with each other, to be less judgmental of each other, and to really honor each other's humanity in very, very intentional ways.
Well, as the saying goes, diamonds are made in the rough, right?
That's it. That's a word.
And Jamal, as we're talking about funding now, I want to ask you, as a director or one of the directors of the MLK Center, how important is funding and promotion for resources for your center, and how does that affect what you're able to accomplish?
I think that funding is very important. It impacts not only what we're able to do, but how we do it as well. Because realizing for our space and the work that we do, we want to have an impact all across campus. And this campus, as we know, is huge. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of students. But even just the physical space that we're in can really only accommodate 79. So when you think about the work that we do, funding is very impactful of how do we go outside beyond our physical space of the MLK Center and really do different things. Most recently, our diversity, our deep retreat was one of the biggest things we've done in a while to really engage the campus community from a diverse group of different identities, and really dive in deep into their own identities, but also understanding how other people show up on this campus. With the overall goal of really helping students establish what we've been talking about, which is empathy, but also not just become empathetic, but learn how to be more inclusive leaders, and challenge them to work through some of the experiences they've had to come back to this campus and really impact, the institution. And I mean, I think that just not even beyond our office, as they mentioned, for student organizations, funding is a huge barrier. A lot of student organizations would love to do more, would love to have an impact. And though, as our office, we are able to provide funding, and Dr. Feast Price is able to provide funding, I do think that there should be more. To make sure that our students, whether they are SAB or BSU or ASA, whatever institute, whatever group, if we're intentional about what we want the campus experience to be, then we should put more funds behind it.
I'm glad you brought Dr. Price back up, because I want to ask you now, Dr. Price, how can the university ensure more funding for the Office of Institutional Diversity? What are some strategies to help make that work?
Mm-hmm. If you don't mind, may I just add to the previous question that talked about helping students to understand the value of engaging with the difference, and then I'll share some information about the funding piece.
Yeah.
When Lyman T. Johnson integrated this university, there was a legal case that brought it about. And so we went from this legal case to a moral case for diversity, and now we're at a place where people don't people aren't focused on diversity and inclusion because it's a legal issue. Neither are they concerned because it's a moral issue. People want to understand the value proposition associated with engaging with difference. If I'm with my tribe or my clique or my girls or my posse, and I don't have to be engaged, then I won't. But helping people to understand that there is an expectation when you go out into the world of work that you engage with a diverse population. The workforce, the products are far better when there is diversity among the workforce, which is why organizations, companies, Fortune 500 companies, they want diversity. And when people go into those work environments and they cannot work collaboratively across difference and appreciate and respect difference, then they are not as successful. So when I work with students, I help them to understand that if they want to be successful and use their degrees to the best of their ability when they leave this institution, they have to understand and respect the value of difference, and they have to meet people in the middle and get to know people that are different and understand difference. So getting to your question about funding, I believe that we have a significant amount of funds. Is there a need for more? We can always use more funds, but I also believe that we have what I deem to be a significant amount in that we have the Inclusive Excellence Funds. And I know that we're not all resourced the same. We have students that come to this campus. Their family income is $25,000. They might be a part of a student organization, and whereas some students come from families, they can whip out a credit card, charge it, they have no problem being reimbursed. Some of our student organizations, they may not have students that have a credit card with a $5,000 limit where they can pay for things and get reimbursed. So that's part of the problem. And I know that is something that has been communicated to other student bodies that control some of the purse strings. On this campus, we have the Inclusive Excellence Funds, whereby students can access those resources for programming. There are times when there's a call for proposals and students can put together a little one-pager, submit it, and get funds. But also when students contact the Office for Institutional Diversity and convey their needs, whether it's putting on a gala or having a speaker come to campus, or the fact that they want to go to a conference that is specific to their group, the Office for Institutional Diversity make those resources available, because we recognize that the experience of college is more than just going to class. It does happen that through that co-curricular aspect. So I'll stop there.
And you said the word experience, and that's exactly what we're going to get into now, because statistics on campus show that there is a disparity among minority and non-minority students. Retention rates are lower among minority students than they are of non-minority students, and minority faculty don't even make up a quarter of the staff at UK. So WRFL reporter Jasper Jones has more on those diversity statistics that make up the university.
According to the Office for Institutional Diversity, retention rate among minority students is 69% for the class of 2020. For non-minority students, 76% have stayed in school after their third year. Minority first-year enrollment has seen an increase. Since the 2009-2010 school year, minority enrollment has risen by over 5,000 students. Although minority employment has risen steadily since 2006, they only make up 20% of the faculty at the university. Only 3 members out of 21 on the Board of Trustees are minorities. And there are only 2 minority deans at UK out of the 16 colleges the school supports. Jasper Jones, WRFL News.
Dr. Price, I want to get back to you. So since you advised President Capilouto, what does he think about these numbers? Is there a concern from university leadership with this lack of minority representation among faculty?
There is a commitment to diversifying our faculty. I play a key role in assisting with recruiting. Every university across the country, they struggle with identifying faculty to come to the university, and sometimes it has to do with supply and demand. It also has to do with the fact that as much as we love our state, Not everyone wants to come to a red state. Some people may want to go to a blue state or a purple state. I remember another faculty member, and this is real. This is a real lived experience. We had an African-American faculty who was doing phenomenally well. She decided to leave the university, and her concern was that I desire to find a Black mate in this city, and my chances of finding one is very limited at best. So I choose to go to a more urban community where my chances of being a part of a certain community and finding a mate of my choice is more likely. So the reality is that even though there is a commitment by the president and the provost, we have resources that are made available. In the College of Arts and Sciences, there was a cluster hire of 6 faculty that are engaged in African American studies as well as other critical disciplines. We recognize that it is not always easy to get faculty to consider, because most people will say Kentucky of all places. Why Kentucky? But then when they get here, they develop an affinity. So, for example, I'll use my colleague Corey Baker, who I met Corey Baker at a conference a few years ago, recruiting diverse faculty. I enticed him to explore, consider. And now he is a faculty in the College of Engineering, and he too assists with recruiting not only faculty, but students. And he helps them to understand that give the university a chance, come to the city, explore, and you may find that you like it here. He loves it here. Thus, he's able to recruit others.
With this common theme of stepping out of your comfort zone, Ms. Taylor, I want to ask you, how has your office helped non-minority students and faculty change and shape their opinions on minority students?
Some of the programming that we do is really centered on understanding the impact of marginalization on folks. I'm a social worker by trade, and so I'm skilled at hitting people in the feelings. And I think in my experience, I don't think I know, in my experience, when folks who don't experience like multiple forms of marginalization and oppression, when they hear what it is like for other people, there are times when that can really shift how a person who holds more dominant identities sees the world and sees other people. Part of what we have to do and what we do in our office is, first of all, our first role is to support people who've been impacted. And so for the folks who have been called the N-word walking down the street, or folks who've had a hijab snatched off, or a Latinx person who's been, told to go back to their country, I get concerned about those folks first, because that is part of the reason why people disconnect from this institution. Our second job is to do the work, and it's often hard and it's messy and it's risky, but it's important to help shift the culture of this campus. We are operating from a lens of equity out of Bias Incident Support Services, because equity is what gets everybody what they need, no matter what that is. And so we all win when we're operating from a place of equity. But we also have to be very mindful. Folks who hold dominant identities, particularly dominant racialized identities, experience the world very differently than people who do not hold dominant racialized identities. And it is about educating those folks about what whiteness is, how it shows up, whiteness as a system. We need to have those kinds of conversations. And that is the way, in my experience, how we have been able to shift the hearts of people. If you can reach people in their heart, then you can reach them in their head. But you have to hit them in an emotional place in order for them to tap into that empathy that allows them to hear those experiences of other folks and take that in and use that as motivation.
And as your office tries to shift people's hearts, the university has said that they're committed to making the campus more diverse in the future. The UK has set a plan in motion since 2017 to do so, and some of those goals mentioned include increasing the percentage enrollment of undergraduate African American, Hispanic, Latino, and underrepresented minority students, and increasing the percentage enrollment of graduate minority students. WRFL reporter Jasper Jones has more on UK's goals on promoting a more diverse and welcoming campus for all.
The University of Kentucky is 2 years into its diversity plan. The plan seeks to not only recruit diverse student and faculty, but also retain them. Assistant Dean and Director of Diversity for the College of Agriculture, Food, and Environment, Ashley Holt, says minority students come into college with a disadvantage.
And our minority students come with a lot more than, than others. Some of our family backgrounds, our demographics, our educational opportunities, we come at a disadvantage a lot of times. And so to get to a university such as the University of Kentucky, the resources and the need that we need in order to be successful is going to be a lot more.
Holt says making campus more diverse is not a quick process.
The change is coming, but I just think we have to be a little bit more patient with it and recognize that it's not going to happen overnight.
The plan looks to raise underrepresented minority enrollment by nearly 2.5% and retention rate by nearly 3%. Jasper Jones, WRFL News.
Dr. Price, I want to ask, has the university been making progress toward its goals with this current diversity plan?
We have been making strides in the positive direction. We have increased our enrollment, our retention, as well as our graduation. But what I will also say is that when you look at student success issues, you can't look at it in a small way. You have to look at it in a very broad way. Even if you look at slavery and the progression, people and generations and how it has impacted generations and some of the families that our students have come from. I'm a first generation high school graduate and college graduate. My children are now in college and they're successful. My point is that the issues associated with our history plays out today, and issues associated with preparedness, and you look at some of the zip codes and where students are coming from and opportunities, that just doesn't happen overnight. And while as a campus community, we have resources that are put into place to ensure success, I just have to tie in the historical piece that we're trying to work to overcome when students get to our campus community to ensure their success. We put scaffolding resources all around, whether it's through student and academic life or through the Office for Institutional Diversity with such programs as CARES and student support services. But we put those services in place because we know that the chances of students succeeding are far better when those resources are put into place. But I have to just make mention of some of the history that we all originate from that makes it more difficult for us to succeed.
And to wrap things up, Jamal, I just wanted to ask you, so should this diversity plan better help promote student organizations and events that are held at the MLK Center and by any other student organization so incoming minority students feel like they have a place, going off of what Dr. Price was saying?
I'm shaking my head yes. I feel like that was a yes or no question, but I do agree. I think that we definitely, as an institution, can work to promote more of the events that are happening, and not just within the Martin Luther King Center or from our historically underrepresented and marginalized groups, but just in general. I think right now we are in a time where students are just highly disengaged, whether that's based off of where they live on campus or from social media and things like that. Students are not taking the opportunities to really engage with diverse people. So I think that we definitely can do a stronger job in highlighting the events that are happening on campus that are centered around diversity, inclusion, and equity, and figure out like how do we get them there, because there are a lot more barriers that we haven't been able to identify that I think we need to look more deeply into, because we're doing these things to benefit students.
All right, well, it looks like we're running short on time, so we would like to thank everyone for joining us here on WRFL, and we would like to thank our guests again, Carol Taylor Shim, Jamal McDaniel, and Dr. Sonja Feast-Price for being a part of the program. Hopefully, our experts have shed light on the history and future here of diversity at UK. Join us next week as we discuss the effects of screen time. Once again, I'm your host, Muhammad Ahmad. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Campus Voices. Have a good night.